Yeah, good evening, everyone. So, last session we learned about data binding, how to use data binding. So, we learned both the one-way and two-way binding. So, now today we will see few more important concepts. We will see how we can interact and work with APIs. So, data from API. That means previously we done some hard coded data, some data we kept inside state and we accessed and used it. So, but now we need to understand how do we deal with API. Actually, concept of working with API data so is important. I hope everybody knows basics of API, but I will give a simple overview. Right. So because what is the role of React developer in companies? What is the role of a React developer in companies? Building effective user interfaces. Using interfaces, we can build effective user interfaces. So that is the primary aim. So from where data will come to us? So data comes to us from APIs. So every day React developers work will be with API. So what is the concept of API? How it works? We will see. First, we will try some free APIs. Then we will create our own APIs also. We will learn both how they are going to work. Okay. So technically, generally, API is application programming interface. API means application programming interface. So actually, it is a concept of distributed computing. API is a concept of distributed computing. So what is distributed computing? It is a concept of distributed computing. So what is distributed computing? Distributed computing is nothing but distributed computing allows two different applications running on two different machines to share information. Two different applications running on two different machines can share information, or so it can be like or two different applications running in two different process of same machine can share information. This is also distributed computing. That means two applications running on two different machines can share information, or two applications running on same machine can share information. For example, we are using a Facebook app in our mobile. From where the data for that app comes from. Facebook app is showing some data. From where the data is coming? That is coming from a Facebook server app. This front-end Facebook app on your mobile is connected to an server-side Facebook app. So it shares information from server app to client, from client to server, app to app communication. For example, I think in the beginning we discussed, suppose I am watching Netflix here. I'm watching Netflix. In a browser, I am watching Netflix. This is Netflix web application. I can watch Netflix. In my PC, there is a Netflix app. In this app also, I can watch Netflix. What is difference? In an app, so much of data can be available offline also. That means you can even download movie and watch later. So many details are provided offline. When you are connected, you can get updated details. You are not connected, still certain details are available. So what is this Netflix app? It is a distributed application. That means on your mobile, you are using Netflix, Zomato, Swiggy, WhatsApp, Skype. All these are distributed apps, distributed applications. So two applications running on two different machines can share information. That is distributed. Not only that, two applications running on same machine also can share information. For example, you are having a bank app and you are doing some transaction. It sends OTP. OTP comes where and stores where? OTP comes and stores in your SMS app. Am I right? Is that SMS app belongs to bank? No, two different apps. But sometimes this bank app can read that OTP from that SMS and fill up automatically. Am I right? If you give such permissions, it is possible. That means it can read the data from another app on the same device and it can use it. That means two different apps can share information between within same computer or different computer. In that case, data must be in such a way that it is suitable for any platform, any device, any application. So how it is possible? That means if data is in such a way that it can fit to any device, any OS, any environment, then it is distributed. Distributed means it allows different applications running on different environments to share information. The main concept API main role, a main role is to make data reachable to any device and any platform. That is the main concept of API. So we write application logic in such a way that it can run everywhere. It can reach everywhere. That is the main concept. And actually, the world's first API, do you know? So the world's first API is eBay. It is a shopping site. It is the world's first API. Even today, eBay is very lightweight API. That means it runs, Paytm is there. I hope you know in Paytm shopping is there. Paytm have shopping inside. Do you know that shopping is done in Paytm using an eBay app? If you open Paytm shopping, it will open eBay. That means in a app and another app is running. Such lightweight and such comfortable app API is. That's what API's main purpose is. eBay is one of that kind. So it is the first app API. After that, so many APIs came. But actually how this API works? That means how this API works. Generally, so API have three specifications. API have three specifications. So we have SOAP, we have REST, and we have JSON. Three type of communications are there: SOAP, REST, and JSON. Actually, SOAP is service oriented, service oriented architecture protocol. It is SOAP. Actually, in SOAP, consumer will send XML request, and provider will send XML response. Request and response will be in the form of XML. That is SOAP. Sender will send an XML request, so provider will send an XML response. So the communication between client and server is in the form of XML. We are not using this anymore. So that is several years back. Latest generation, previously few years back, we used REST. REST is representational state transfer. In REST, consumer will send a simple query request, and provider will send an XML response. These days, we are not using this REST also very much. We call RESTful services. So we are now in the generation of JSON. JSON is what? JavaScript object notation. In JSON, consumer will send an XML JSON request, and the provider will send an JSON response. JSON is less verbose, very lightweight, it is faster, it is secure, and it is understandable to every browser. It makes the data reachable to every device. The main aim of API is to make the data available to every device. How to create these APIs? For that, you need server-side technology. Actually, so many technologies are there. So that means various distributed computing technologies. Your technologies will teach you, like we have Corba, we have like DCOM, we have like RMI, like EJB, like remote web services like remoting. All these are distributed computing technologies. That means your technology will teach you this. Suppose you belong to Java, they will teach you web services and RMI. By using that, RMI is remote method invocation. By using that, you will learn how to create APIs. That means how to create application interface in such a way that data will reach everywhere. You are learning .NET, then you will learn remoting. You are learning other technologies like Python and all, you have Corba. Corba is used in more than 15 languages, common object request broken architecture. These are all distributed technologies. That means creating API that depends on what technology you learned. So you belong to Java, .NET, PHP, Python. Those technologies will teach you how to create these APIs, how to write application interface, so that whenever client request comes, our API will send a response. So if you are full stack UI development, you can build in Node.js, Express, MongoDB. So the concept is whatever data comes from this API, we need to consume and present. And in which form data is expected? data is expected in the form of JSON. For example, you see here, suppose we have a website. So this is NASA website, api.nasa.gov. This is NASA's official API website. That means NASA people says that we have space related data and we will give this data freely to developers. Any developer can use our data legally and they can build good websites related to web art, science and technology. So you are trying to educate the world about science and technology. NASA says, we will help you. We will provide you data. If NASA is providing data, that's great. That means you don't need to Google search and pick up that false data. You can get accurate, correct data from NASA. Now the question is how these people will provide me data. I want to build a website on Mars. I want to show people Mars photos, videos. Then you can see they have APIs. There is browse APIs. I will click browse APIs. You will see they given lot of APIs. Astronomy picture of day, asteroids. So many APIs are there. And I will select an API here. So Mars rover photos. And you will see that the API related links will come. And I click on this API link and you see now the data comes in this way. And you know what is the format of this data? JSON. And see what is the final data coming. What does that means? Object. It is an object. This object contains a property called photos. And photos is what type? Array type. Array of objects. It's very complex. First, developer's responsibility is to understand the data. What data is coming. And store that and use it. And create an interface for this. That we will see how we can do. That means how we can consume the data and present. How we can create interactions with the data. Let's see one simple example. Now, later, after we learn all the concept, then I will show you our own APIs, how we can create. But I can show you that only if you have any knowledge of any server-side technology. If you don't have, then I have to teach you a little bit of database and server side, then creating APIs, and then show how to consume and present in React. I will do that. I will explain by using MongoDB, Node.js. I will show you how to create APIs. But creating API is not a part of React. What is React developer's responsibility? Consuming the API and creating interface. That is responsibility. Now, can you tell which database they use? Which database NASA is using? Database. Which database they are using? We don't know. With server-side technology, we don't know. Is it necessary for a developer to know which database and which server-side technology they are using? Not necessary. That means we don't care. We don't need that because our concept is just data. So what is the source of data? What is the source for the API? We don't need that. We, as a React developer, we just need this, right? Actually, this is the primary role of React developers. Actually, from past few months, means more than 7-8 months now. So several job support people are coming. You know job support now? Job support means nothing. It is illegal, but people are making money with that. So job support means, suppose in US, a person got a project, job. US or UK or somewhere outside. He got a job, and in that job his role is React developer, but he don't know anything about React, right? And company puts him in that job and says that we will give 1 week time, you learn React and you have to work on it. If you say I can't do, get out. Then he can't say that I can't do. He will say that, okay, I will try to manage. I will manage. He can't quit the company. So they give only maximum 1 week time, saying that in 1 week you have to know by yourself and manage everything. Then what those people do, because they can't handle, so they seek support from offshore, from India. So we have so many company developers working on React. They take help from them. They say that we will pay you this much money every month and you manage our work. Meantime, he will be learning that course. He will be watching you, what you are doing. He will give access to his machine. You will be working. So that means you are doing everything remotely. And that means you are a React developer in India, you are making money, extra money. Every day extra, you have to work only 1 hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hour extra after your job. You can log in and you can do his work and give to him. And that is good money. People are paying lot of, some people pay half of their salary to you. US dollars, right? That means people are doing this like a business. Actually, you see proxies, they are all called proxies, right? And actually just 2-3 weeks back, 2-3 weeks, maximum 2-3 week back, in Amirpet, 40-45 plus these institutes which are illegally doing these proxies, they are sealed and government taken all their computers. In Amirpet, 40-45 institutes are cleaned up now. Software institutes who are doing illegally proxies. That means they are doing it as a business because it is crores of money, not lakhs, crores. Crores of money. They are doing it illegally. Just 1-2 weeks back, somebody complained on them, and this IT department came and complete 3-4 vans came and all 40 institutes cleaned up, including people also they took. People also who are doing proxy, they are also in jail. Cybercrime, it is cybercrime, right? They took them also, right? That means the point here is, in last 1 year, whoever asking us for proxy support, they ask us, will you recommend any person who can do my work? I will pay him. Then what they're asking that my work is on React or my work is on Angular. My concept is to work with APIs. That is only the job. That means they have to consume the API, create the interfaces, and handle the interaction with the interface. That means everybody coming with this kind of concept only. From past 1 year, everybody job support is React Angular only. Java developer React, Java developer Angular, Java developer .NET developer React, .NET developer Angular. They will take 2-3 months to finish, learn and handle by themselves. But till that moment, they have to manage the work. And what is the work to be done there? Working with APIs. That is the reason you need to be very, very strong in interacting and working with the APIs. So we will see today with different APIs, we will see how to create interactions and manage them. Let's see first how to consume this. And for this, you need this URL, and generally actual to consume API. So here consuming API in React, how you can consume API in React. Actually, what you can do is, so React can use various JavaScript promises and jQuery library or any third party for consuming API. That means React can use various JavaScript promises, jQuery library, and any third party for consuming API. React internally don't have anything for API. That means React library internally don't have anything to communicate with the API. Either it has to depend on JavaScript promises, or it have to depend on jQuery library, or it have to depend on any third party. Internally, React is not having any library for communicating with the APIs. So that means React implicitly don't have any library for API. It have to depend on others. Actually, JavaScript promise is nothing but, in JavaScript you learned fetch. In JavaScript you might have learned fetch, which is used for communicating with APIs. It is a JavaScript promise, fetch. You can use it, or you can use jQuery AJAX methods. jQuery AJAX methods like $.getJSON, or JSON is a method, or you can use $.AJAX method. By using that, you can communicate, or you can use any third party like Axios. Axios is a very popular third party. So we have Axios. So we have like, third party like Axios. We have like what WG fetch. So these are third parties. They use some methods like Axios, what WG fetch, all these comes under third parties. So many are there third parties. You can use any of these. I will show you all. I will show you how to use JavaScript promise, how to use jQuery AJAX, and how to use a third party. Now, why there are different, they have their own advantages and drawbacks. So what is difference between fetch and JSON? What is difference between fetch and Axios? What is difference between AJAX and Axios? So many points are there. We are going to learn. So initially, first we will see how we can communicate with API by using fetch. Later we can see others, right? We will first see how to work with fetch. Okay. Now one more important, in React, while you are communicating with API, actually consuming and storing of API data is done by using state. So consuming, storing of API data, consuming already we done na? Storing of API data is done by using state. Consuming is done by using these methods. Storing that API data is done by using state. We use a state for storing the data. Already we know, last session we learned, we use state. By using this, we can handle the data. Another important, so when to fetch the data and when to access the data. So for that, generally, so you can fetch data from any API, and store in a reference of state on various events. That means you can use any event. On that event, you can get the data and you can display. But there is another very important point. So on event you can do, but sometimes we want data to get ready at the time of loading the component. That means many times API is not fetched while using event. So API is fetched when component is ready. That means when component is ready, then API also should be ready. Data should be ready. So if you want to fetch the data from API at the time of initialization of component, then you have to use a hook called use effect. This is very important hook. In React, you have seen a hook called use state, and in React you have another hook called use effect. For example, at the time of constructing a component, if you want these interactions to happen, any interaction to happen, then you have to write in use effect. For example, you have a class. At the time of creating an object for class, if you want any functionality, then where to write? At the time of creating an object for class, if you want any functionality to happen, generally where do we write that? We write that in a constructor. Am I right? In a constructor, at the time of constructing the object for the class, if you want any functionality to happen, then you write in a constructor. Now function cannot have a constructor. So at the time of initializing the function, if you want any functionality to happen, you have to write on use effect. Actually, use effect is a hook that defines actions to perform at the time of mounting a component and unmounting a component. Mounting is nothing but component. Mounting is nothing but loading. Unmounting means unloading. Once a component is finished and you want to remove all the component information, that you can do on mounting and unmounting. What is these phases you will learn? Remember, we will have a separate session on hooks. There I will give you detailed list of hooks available and how to use them. But some hooks we will use while working with various concepts. One hook already we used, use state. Another hook is use effect. This is not required until or unless you want some actions to perform at the time of loading. Right? This is actually use effect. How to use that use effect, I will show you. We will see that. So to consume APIs, you need so many things. First, you need a promise or a jQuery method or any third party. Second, you need a state for storing the data. Third, you need to mention when to fetch on any particular event or on loading. We have to configure that. Let's see one example now. So fetch. So consuming and presenting API data using JavaScript fetch promise. We have to use JavaScript fetch promise. I hope you know the syntax of JavaScript fetch promise. We have fetch uses an URL, and it will have then uses a callback function, and then another callback function. This is actually response in binary, and after that, this response in JSON. After that, you will have an catch. catch will throw error if there is any problem. That is the basic library actually. That means this is general JavaScript method. JavaScript method. And do you know which object is used behind this method? JavaScript uses which object to communicate with API? jQuery, JavaScript, anybody have to finally use a browser object to communicate with API. That browser object is XML HTTP request. This is the object used by browser. In JavaScript, you are using fetch, but finally that is controlled by an object called XML HTTP request. In jQuery, you are using Ajax, that is controlled by this object. In an Angular, React, any technology, you are using third-party Ajax. This is the object. Finally, browser Ajax can be only one object, that is XML HTTP request object. This is going to manage all those Ajax calls, right? So let's see how it works, right? So I will create. So first I will create a simple component here. So I will add a component. In the components, I will add a new component, new folder, suppose NASA. I will add two files. So nasa.component.js. Okay. Another file, nasa.component.html. CSS if necessary, otherwise not required. Now we will see here, we will write a function. So export function, and the function is NASA component. Okay, this should return a simple markup, and we will use a class name, so container fluid. And here I will keep a heading Mars rover photos. We need to pull all the data from that and display. Suppose I am displaying in a table. So here class, we have table and table hover. And we have T head. Okay, in TR we have TH. What is the data you want to show? Data we want to display. This is data. And actually every object have lot of details. So this is all the data of one object. I will keep a start and stop. Here it starts and here it ends. This is the data of one object. So that means every object have an ID. It is having a sol. It is having camera. Camera is again object. Camera have ID, name, full name, and image SRC. Camera object ends here. Image SRC. After that, earth date and rover. Rover is again object. Rover name, landing date, launch date. Is the status active or not? Now what I want is, I don't want all these details. I want only the photo ID. Every photo have an ID. I want that. After that, I want, this is photo ID. After that, I want preview. Preview is photo. Photo is actually image underscore SRC. That is the photo path actually, JPG, right? And I want another one, camera name. Which camera took that photo, and rover name. Which rover took that photo. So that means these are the details we want to display. It have a lot of details, but I want only these. Then we need to present this and see. Let's see. When to load the data. I need to load that into table body. Into table body, we need to generate a row In that, these cells must be displayed. Here, important when to do that. There is nothing event mentioned here. I will write one button here. Let's keep a button and say as load photos or load data. That is the button. Now you can see, let's keep this in the startup. What is it? NASA component. And you can see that NASA component is initially having this UI. That is, and when user clicks on that, I will present the data. So here I will give margin top 3. Yeah. Now I want to present this when load data clicked, then I want to load the data. Right on that particular event, I want to perform the functionality. Then we have to write an event and the function here. So we will write a function. What is it? Handle load click. It is a tradition that generally, we call event handlers, right? In JavaScript, you might have learned. In JavaScript, already, for example, so you are writing a button, means you are defining, so here a button. So button have on click is equal to some insert click, and this is so insert button. So this is insert button. Now usually, what is this event? On click is an event. On click, which function it is pointing? Insert click. This is called event handler. We call this as event handler. That means it handles this insert click. That is just tradition. We can give any name. So what we have to do, on click. So we have to access which one? Handle load click. That is the function. What this function have to do is, it has to get the data and it should store the data inside state. Remember, what data is coming? This is the data coming. Now, can you tell me what is the type? What is the type of data that is finally coming? Object. So you need to declare a state. So we will configure. So import, what is it? Use state from React core library. And we will configure a state. How to define? We know. Constant. So one is, what is it? Photos. Understood? Mars. And we have set Mars. We have Mars and set Mars. And in that, we have use state. An object is coming. So what type of data is coming? We are configuring that. An object is coming. Now here on handle click, we need to fetch from the API and load the data in this Mars. Data in that Mars. Then how do we fetch? We have to use fetch method. It is directly available because it is a JavaScript method. And fetch uses URL. You have to copy this URL. Let's copy that URL. That is the URL. And after that, then. What is problem with fetch is, whatever data it fetches, it will come in a binary form. Then what we have to do? We need to use a callback function that will collect response. That response we should return in the form of JSON. This is a simple shorthand technique. That means actually what it is a callback function. That callback function have a parameter called response. That response data is returned in the form of JSON. After that, this JSON data we have to collect. That data we have to collect, and we have to apply this data to which location. This is an object coming. This object must be stored in which location? Mars. So in the state we have to store. Then what we have to do? Set Mars. Into that we have to send the value. The value is what? Data. That means now the data is stored in Mars. Now is Mars array or object? Is it an array or object? It is an object. In that object, there is an array called photos. Which one we have to map? We have to read all the photos. That means we need to read all the objects. That means we have to map over these photos. Right? That means now actually this entire is returned. This entire is returned in the form of JSON. And actually it is an object. This we stored in which location? Mars. So Mars is an object. In Mars object, there is photos. This photos is an array. Understood? That is the photos array. Am I right? Means we have to iterate over Mars or iterate over Mars photos. We have to iterate not over Mars because Mars is an object. In that there is a property called photos. That photos is an what type? Array. So that means now what is the iteration here? So that means we need to read here. So we loaded that data. After loading the data, that is finished. Just what we have to do here, we have to write the logic. So this row should repeat here. So we have a binding expression. What we have to do? Mars dot, in Mars we have photos. Photos dot map. And we need to read every item. And for every item, we need to create a cell, a row. In that row, we have to create a cell. What is the first cell? First cell should contain photo ID. How to access? Item dot ID. In the second cell, we need to access item dot, what is the first one? ID. Okay, item dot second one is image na? Preview. Preview is img. This we need to display in a picture, right? Then we will use an image. So we will put an img tag. Img, and in that src we will apply that. What is it? Item dot img underscore src. So width is 100 and height is 100. Like this we define. Now another one we need the camera name. Camera name is actually, it is an camera object. In that camera object, there is a camera ID, name and full name. I will use here that one. That means what we are doing here, we are using, what is it? Item dot camera dot full underscore name. And another cell, rower name, item dot rower dot name. It will get the rower name. This is what it is going to generate. It is going to display. So we need to get that and display and show that here. Now here we have some problems. You see now, inspect. Let's go to the console here. We are finding some errors here. You can see in the element. So console, you see some errors. It is saying that, so cannot read properties of undefined map. Why it is showing like that? Undefined map. Why? Because at the time of loading itself, it is trying to present them. Understood? At the time of loading itself, it is trying to present them. But at the time of loading, this map is empty. Na? When it will be applied, when you click this button, am I right? When you click the button, then this data will come. Till that moment, it is not having any data. These kind of issues will come. That means it is, we are writing here. We are writing here means what? At the time of loading the page, table tries to load, but there is no data to load. Then it obviously it will show error. When this data will be ready? When you click the button, but it is not waiting. To implement such technique, what we do, we create a separate component. In that component, we load the data and we will bring that component when user clicks the button. That is how the logic works. So writing like this is not a correct option. This will work, but later we have to implement like this, because it is trying to load. It is trying to load before you click the button. And before you click the button, there is nothing, empty. That means if anything is trying to load at the time of loading the component, then that's what I said. We should not write these events. We have to use an option. What is it? This must be done while loading. Then we have to handle this logic, not on button click. We have to handle the logic on loading. Loading means you have to write a logic called use effect. Use effect. So use effect is actually, it is a member. You have to import this use effect. Actually, we have to write use effect. It uses a callback function and it returns. It returns. And very important is this callback function. This callback function will use this logic. Understood? That callback function uses this logic. That means this indicates this activity will be performed at the time of loading the page. At the time of loading the page. Then how to handle buttons and all, I will tell you. We will learn that. So initially, it is trying to load the API data at the time of loading, because you are presenting directly now. You are presenting directly. Now you have to define on use effect. Remember, use effect is expecting one more important, it is expecting dependencies. Actually, later when you learn about use effect hook detail, you will understand. We will discuss. That means it is nothing but it is saying that I will load this data at the time of initializing. Is there any another condition? If there is any another condition, you can mention that condition here. That means we can say that whenever user changes a drop down, then load again. That means what is the dependency here? Dependency is whenever ID is changed, whenever name is changed, whenever a selection is changed, it should update this again. Understood? That means this is indicating the dependency for loading the data. Currently, there are no dependencies, so that is empty. Later, you will learn about dependencies. Later, what happens when user changes the ID, then it will load again. That means currently it is loading only once, but if you can make it load again and again, that depends on dependency. Use effect loads how many times? Only once. If you want this to load after every change, after any particular interaction, that dependency you have to mention in that array. Currently, there are no dependencies, so we have to leave it empty. What are dependencies? How dependencies are used? That situation will come in the next concept. We will learn about that. Initially, use effect requires this. Now, see what happens here. So the data here we are trying to access. So this is showing one problem here. This time that is okay, but this time, so some more issues are there. Cannot read the properties of a map. A reading map cannot read properties of undefined. That means it is saying that there is nothing like there is nothing to map here. There is nothing to map. Why it is saying there is nothing to map? Why it is saying there is nothing to map? Because here we are storing data, which is an object, and here we are reading. So mars.photos.map, it is not having that. Shall we check what data is coming actually? We will do one thing. So here, before set mars, we will write console.log, whatever the data is coming, right? That means at the time of loading, what data is coming, we are refreshing this now. And you can see, so at the time of loading, whatever data is coming, it is not there here. That means it is not loading. Shall we check whether this use effect is working or not? We will check that use effect is working or not by using an alert. Alert, I will just keep as high. That means this use effect should work. So when you run this component, it should display that. That means this use effect is not working, right? So what is the point? Use effect need to function. So this functions, then it will work, right? Here you can see this use effect is configured, but it is not working. When it should work? At the time of loading the component, it have to work. That means you see now, I will clean up all this logic. We will keep a simple point, then we will implement this. I will remove this. I will keep it for a later use like this. Later we will paste there. And here I will not write any handle. I will not keep any button because these all we will implement later. Means next point we will see. And here we need to just define. Simple. I will keep this also in a separate location. And you can see it says high, right? That means you can see here it is showing high. That means it is working fine. I will refresh the data. You can see it is showing high. That means what it is able to do? It is able to display the message. That means it is working at the time of loading. Okay. Now what we will do at the time of loading, we will fetch the data from API and we will store here. If what is the data type we mentioned? Object type. If you don't mention any data type, what is the data type? If you don't mention the data type, then the default data type is considered as any. Any means it can handle any kind of data. You can see this data is undefined now. Undefined means it is any type. So whatever data is assigned, it will handle that data. So, but see now, what we will do, we will fetch from which location? That NASA API. Let's copy that NASA API. We are fetching from NASA API. And you will see here. So paste. Okay. Then what we have to do? Then usually then uses a callback function. Just for your clarity, people who don't know fetch, I am showing. It uses a callback function. That callback function uses response. This response is returned in the form of response.what? JSON. After that, we have to collect the response data. What is it? Then we have to collect the response data and we will put it here. What is the response data? So another callback function. This will collect the data and we will assign the data. I will do one thing. I will just put console.log. What is that console log? We will put the data. And you can see at the time of loading, data came, and see it is an photo. It is an object with a property called photos, which is of what type? Array, and it is having 800 photos. That means we understood what type of data is coming. Now What is it? Photos, right? Now what we have to do is, I will do one thing. I will use data.photos. Understood? Data.photos. What this data.photos? Data.photos have to present only array na? You can see only array is coming. It depends on how you want to manage the data. Now what we will do is, suppose I want to store this array, then what is the data type here? Data type is array. If you want to store the data, then means what I will do, I will apply this into what? We have to use what? Set mars. Into that we are sending the photos. Understood? That means whatever data you collected that is stored inside this set mars, that means now mars is a object or an array. It is not an object now. Why? Because object is data. In that, which property you are reading? Photos. Photos is an array of objects. Then you are storing an array. Now this mars is a array. Now can you map on that array? We can map on that array. That means what we are doing here, we are using, what is it? Mars. Mars dot what? Map. On that map, we are reading every item. After reading every item, we will put first cell. In the row, we will create first cell. In the cell, what we want to display? Item dot ID. That means it has to get all the IDs and show. You can see all the IDs are coming. And you see error is common because every item must have a key. Item dot, what is it? ID. Now that is there. So it will be fine. Now you will not get that error. All the data will be loaded. Now we need to load other details. Other details. Then how do we load other details? Just what we have to do, another cell. In the cell we need an image. So this image is having src. Image source is coming from item dot img underscore src. And width is equal to 100 and height is equal to 100. And here I am giving one more. In this cell, in this we want to display item dot camera dot full underscore name. It will get the camera name. And another one, item dot rover dot name. It will get the complete rover name. And you can see these all details are ready. That means it is accessing some rover name is wrong. What is it? Rover is having full name, right? So rover is also having name, that is accessing fine. Okay. This is rover. Rover have a name. And what is that camera? Camera is also having a name, but we are using full name, right? Fine. Now you can see the data comes here and it will display the data here. That is how we are accessing the data and displaying. And these are all the photos. That means data is provided to us. This data we are loading. And very important, we are doing at the time of initializing the component. Now, if you want this to happen on any button click or any specific event, you don't want to load immediately because this is doing on initialization phase. Am I right? That means when component is initialized, this data is coming. For that, what we have done, we have used use effect. So what is the syntax of use effect? I will tell here. That entire example I will give you here. So what is use effect? So here I will give use effect syntax. So syntax for use effect is use effect. It uses a callback function and it returns the functionality and it uses dependencies. Dependencies, we call dependencies. Dependencies indicates when this load should happen again. Currently load will happen only once. When if you want this to happen again and again, you have to tell what is the dependency. That situation will come later. If there are no dependencies, you have to keep it empty. But remember, without writing dependency, you cannot live. So dependency is compulsory. Even it is empty, you have to mention empty dependencies. So without mentioning dependencies, use effect cannot work. It will work, but it will go to an infinite loop. That means your page will be having infinite loop, continuously looping again and again. We have to avoid that. By doing this, you can do, right? Later the dependency, you will use it. So here, now see, I'm implementing a simple another trick. Suppose you are using here Mars. I'm using constant. This is photos. Photos is a set photos, and it is use state, use state, use state, and it is an array. Am I right? It is another array. Now what I am doing here, I am writing a function. We are writing a function, handle load click. That is the function. On handle load click, what we are doing, so we are accessing set photos. Into that we are setting that Mars. Understood? We are setting that Mars. Later you will learn what is this means. This is nothing but you are creating what? Photos. Photos is an empty array. It is not having any data initially. Later data will come to it. So when user clicks on this button, whatever Mars photos are there, this is an array. This array is copied into this array. When it is copied, when user clicks the button, on that button, it can perform that functionality. It can perform the functionality. Such logics we have to write. Later I will show you, because for that we will create a reasonable example, right? Initially, what we do, we are just handling only one functionality. When it loads, it will load the data. Actually, we do another way also. We remove this and we will put in a function. This function name is load photos. In this function, we will write the logic, and this we will call at the time of initializing load photos. This is also okay, because generally in our React, component initialization phase contains lot of activities. All you cannot write there, it becomes complex. So you write a function and call that function here. It is same like your page load. Body load function is there now in JavaScript. In JavaScript, on body load, you want some functionality to happen that you can define here by using what? Use effect. Use effect. Now this is what it is going to do. Everything same. The functionality will be same. You can add anything. But important is sometimes you verify if you got any error in your console, and that error is saying, if you got any error and that error is saying coarse, because usually while working with API, this error will come. If you got any error called coarse, that is your browser problem, then there is no problem in your code. If you got this coarse error, that means your browser is blocking API data. Then what you have to do, you have to use another browser, or in your browser, you have to install a plugin which can unblock coarse. So for example, suppose you see, I have Chrome. This is Chrome browser. In this Chrome browser, actually, we can access the data. You can see I am accessing local host. What is it? 3000. You can see that is coming here also. You see there is an error. What is the first error? It is saying JavaScript is disabled. You need to enable JavaScript. So I will enable JavaScript on this browser. Okay, I will refresh. Now you can see here data have to come here and data is coming. Actually, in this browser, there is a plugin. This is called course plugin. This is actually course plugin. This plugin can enable and disable data. Such problems will come while you are working with browsers. Some browsers will block the data. That is the reason you have to install a separate software, and through that you have to enable. To avoid that, you try on a different browser, it will work. It will work. So, or how to manage course server side itself, you will learn in server side logic. In API designing, I will tell you how to manage the course. But this is very big problem regularly comes when you are practicing. While you are practicing, data may not be displayed on screen. And when you see, error will be saying course. If error is saying course, that is not the problem in your code. That is the problem in your browser. You have to change the browser and test that, right? That is important. So, but this APIs will, in the modern browsers everywhere, they will work, right? So this is how we can present the data. This is one simple example of working with the NASA API. This is nasa.component.js. And presentation your wish. I presented in the format of presented table. Suppose you want, you can design in a card style. Already previously we designed, right? Previously we designed a card style. I showed you. We can design in a card style, like we use a div. We will put a class name dflex and we will use flex wrap. And here we are designing a simple data. This is what is it? Mars dot map. We need every item, and for every item we will design a div. And this div will be working like a card, right? So we will use a class name as card. So, and margin 2, padding 2. And here I will define, here I will define another ID as card. So, okay. And here we will put an image. Image source is equal to, it is coming from item.img underscore src. So class name I will give as card image top. And I will give some height as some 200 pixel. Okay. And we will keep a simple div. Okay. And in this div, I will give class name card body. In this, a data list. In the data list, data term. So here camera. So which camera? Data definition, that is item.camera.full underscore name. Another one is rover. And which rover? So we have item.rover.name. This is presenting in a card style. So we will access local host. So and 3000. These all are displayed in a card style. All are cards. And if you want to display all equal sizes, these are different size. One is large, another one is short. Then what I will do in CSS, we will use hash card, and width I will give 200 pixel. And we need to import that at the top. So we will import. So import, okay, dot slash nasa dot component dot css. We are importing that, then it will get that and display in this way. So responding, the APIs need to respond. They have to get the data and display. Sometimes it will delay the process while communicating with the APIs. Now you can see this is all the details. Now all have even width, right? These are all the photos that we are defining. Now, like this, now we will see another example. This time we will see one simple example with interactions. Now, what is our responsibility as a developer is when you are working as a developer on this kind of data, they will ask you that, okay, this is fine. Now, right side or left side, you put some filters. That means they will say that now you need to design a drop down. In the drop down, user must able to select camera name. In another drop down, user must able to select rover name. Then it should display only the photos that belong to that. That means user should able to select rover name and camera name. Then it will display only those. Currently it is showing 800 photos. We don't want all. We want filter. We want sorting. We want searching. Everything we have to implement in this data. That is what React developers' job. Not just presenting the data, creating interaction. We will see how we can create such interactions on API data, like filtering, searching, such operations we can do. For that, we will see another API. There is another API called, I hope you people know, Fake Store. Fake Store is another API. This is related to ERP, online shopping. Online shopping related some data is available. We will try to use this data and we will try to create an interface for creating like an online shopping cart. We will design like an online shopping cart by using this. Just like Netflix, we will try to create an online shopping like site by using this API, which is Fake Store API. We will take help of this data and present that interface along with interactions that we'll see in next session. Tomorrow we'll do that. Okay. In tomorrow's session, we will learn some more details. Currently, I showed you API with which one? API with fetch. We will see how to use API with jQuery and how to use with third parties. What is difference between them? All I will show. Which one is required according to situation we can try, right? All these three methods we will see tomorrow, right? Different methods, right? Tomorrow we'll continue.